the council meeting for City of Nanaimo for Monday, October the 15th, 2012. Before we start tonight, I would like to make a quick little observation, and it's really to do with the conduct of the public at a council meeting. And there's a large number of people here in attendance here tonight, and I just would like to ask for cooperation if we can and outline a little bit of protocol and conduct for the council meetings. What I would ask is that you respect the people that are speaking and addressing it. For most people, it's a very challenging thing to do, and you know, they're often quite easily distracted. I know I am, and I think if you could give them the courtesy of listening to them, and that really encompasses not only a certain amount of quietness, but also things that you wouldn't normally applause, yelling, calling out and things like that. That's all very distracting. At the council meeting, we're really asking that you show your respect to the speaker and to the council, and obviously for the viewers at home, and try to respect that and avoid anything that might interrupt the council meeting. I'd appreciate your help on that. Thank you. Yeah, well, sit down, please. The meeting started. So we'll ask the acting mayor is Councillor Brennan, and if we would, I'll start by moving the introduction of late items. And Ms. King, do you have any items that you want to bring in, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. We're deleting item HA1, which is from the property maintenance report. The property at 250 View Street has been removed from the agenda. We're replacing pages 21 to 33, which is the housing agreement report for 427 Milton Street and the housing agreement bylaw 2012 number 7157. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could we ask for an adoption of the agenda as amendment? Councillor Brennan, second. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. And ask for an adoption of the minutes as circulated, please. Councillor Brennan, are you going to start off on that one? And then seconder, all those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. We're going down into presentation. First presentation, 5A. Councillor Anderson is the Chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee to introduce a presentation regarding the Nanaimo Transportation Master Plan. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, city staff, my colleagues. Today, the point of this evening is to update Council on the work of the Transportation Advisory Committee and the work that has been completed on the Transportation Master Plan, as well as the next steps as we move forward. In 2008, the Transportation Master Plan was identified as a priority in the official community plan. And when Council passed its strategic plan for 2012 to 2015, transportation and mobility matters were also identified as one of the 6 priorities, which includes a completion of a sustainable transportation plan. The Transportation Master Plan Committee was formed in 2010 to provide policy advice to Council on transportation issues and to support the development of the desired Transportation Master Plan. So preparation for the plan started early this year, and after the last update to Council and the public in March, a series of transportation surveys were undertaken to identify existing travel patterns across various parts of the city. So that portion of the work is now complete, and it will serve to inform the plan moving forward. So I'm excited to say that tonight marks the start of the Nanaimo Transportation Master Plan process, and specifically the efforts to consult with the community. We've acquired a transportation planning consultant with extensive experience in the development of transportation master plans to assist us in moving forward. Urban Systems is a BC-based company which has experience in transportation planning and design. They're a reputable company which has worked on several projects such as the Sea to Sky Highway, the UBC Campus Transit Plan, and the Metro Vancouver cycling network. They've developed transportation master plans for multiple communities and have many strengths in sustainable transportation and public engagement. Urban Systems will be working with the Transportation Advisory Committee and staff to deliver the plan over the next year and ultimately meet the transportation goals. So tonight I'm joined by my fellow colleagues who sit on the Transportation Advisory Committee, Councillor Bestwick and Councillor Greaves, and unfortunately Councillor McKay is not here tonight, but also by city staff members, Director of Engineering and Public Works, Susan Clift, and Transportation Engineer Gordon Foy, and our main presenter tonight, which is Urban Systems Project Manager John Steiner. Sorry.
Your Worship, members of Council, pleased to be here this evening. Also introduce my other business partner, Brian Patterson, who will be extensively involved in the transportation plan. The work we do, and I'll just maybe give you an outline of the presentation I'll go through, is a little bit about ourselves and our experience, but mostly talk about the work plan and the approach going forward as it's been laid out with staff. And talk a little bit about how the community and other agencies are engaged in the process, to give you a bit of an overview of that process that you continued on, and a little bit of an overview of existing conditions that we've started to synthesize in some of the work that you've been doing. As mentioned by Councillor Anderson, a lot of our work has been in Western Canada. We are BC-based. We are located in other provinces as well now, with a over 35-year history. We're about 350 people in 10 offices across Western Canada. A big part of our practice that we do work in is in the area of transportation, areas from the planning realm right through to the design and delivery realm. We have a coverage in a whole series of areas, including multimodal plans such as this one, active transportation, walking and cycling. We do a lot of work in transit as well as roads and highways and urban streets. The plan itself, and I just want to maybe say a few words about that, is a long-term transportation strategy plan for the community. A 20-30-year plan that will have an implementation strategy, and we'll be able to bring some of the experience that we have to help the community at the end of the day form the policies that will frame out much of how you approach transportation going forward, as well as the practices and procedures that you may use in the various areas, as well as the investments you're going to be making in the community over the next 20 to 30 years. We'll also put together, as part of that process, an implementation strategy, but it's important to recognize that we look at this in the individual modes, and some of our experience, as shown on this slide, is really giving you an idea of our experience in some of the areas in master plans overall, and I can say we've been involved in a whole series of master plans throughout the province of BC for communities, from small communities of 10 to 15,000 people, right up to larger communities, mid-sized communities and large communities in the province and in Western Canada. A lot of our work, as I mentioned, has to do with also active and sustainable transportation, that it is a lot of work in the areas of walking and cycling. In addition to that, transit. And as part of this process, we're not creating the transit plan per se. We're supporting your staff and working with BC Transit as they progress on their transit futures plan for the region. And that's a process that's being undertaken in parallel to the work we're doing. But through our work, we've done a lot of transit strategies in different regions, and we'll be able to provide some support around that as well. We also look at and do a lot of work in the area of major roads, urban roadways, and particularly urban streets, which are typically just multi-use facilities, more and more so looking at them in terms of mobility for all modes, all people, all ages, all abilities. We've done a lot of work in other areas, including goods movement, parking, which again, looking at from policy level and best practices level right through to some implementation. We also do a lot of work, as you probably know, in the area of finance and implementation for for infrastructure. And as part of this process, certainly making sure that you've got a plan at the end of the day that is implementable and affordable, based on our experience, is a really important part of the process going forward. forward. So I'll just give you a little bit of an overview on the work plan itself, that we're, again, continuing the work that has been done, building off much of that work, and the launch phase that we are in right now is really taking stock of a lot of the work that you have done, and the staff has done, and the committee has done leading into this work right now. And a lot of that is all of the data and information gathering, all of the issues identification, and so forth. So we'll synthesize that in the phase 1. In phase 2, we move into a discovery phase of what existing and future conditions are looking like, and from a technical point of view, in terms of the demand patterns and travel characteristics based on your planned land uses, as well as looking at some of the relationships between the land uses as they exist today and as they're being planned in transportation, which are very much connected to each other, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a while. We want to make sure that we understand what is going on in the city and into the future. The third phase is, again, building from some of the work you've already done in terms of the vision and goals, and putting that into the form of objectives for the overall plan that has the vetting with the community. And specifically, we'll start to look at some targets, and typically those targets are around mode of travel in and around the city, as well as to and from the city. And so we'll establish some targets that help to ensure that they're in alignment with the vision and goals. Ultimately, that they're consistent and they're speaking to those goals in terms of mode changes from perhaps driving over to other modes that perhaps are more desirable, in some cases in terms of transit, walking, and cycling, as you see fit for your community. Phase 4, we'll start to look at considering transportation possibilities, and that's really about the ideas generation in terms of what are the potential possibilities for addressing some of the issues and the opportunities that are being assessed in the overall plan. We want to make sure that we vet all of the opportunities, all of the possibilities, and undertake a preliminary screening process of those. Phase 5 is where we start to assemble the plan itself in terms of that 20 to 30-year vision. And we'll start to, as I said, make sure that they include policies, procedures, best practices, but also the physical facilities that would be seen as part of that long-term plan. Along with that, there's an implementation strategy, and again, it's looking at the affordability and implementing many of these initiatives over that 5 and 10-year horizon time frame. And then final phase in this is pulling together everything in terms of the overall plan preparation. The process itself has an extensive community and public consultation process, as well as agency stakeholder process. Certainly our experience on transportation plans and other efforts around master plans are that it is very difficult sometimes to get complete public view and public participation in our process. What we find is you need to invite the public in many different forums and many different formats. And so what we've identified here is a complete range of strategies and means in which we would engage the public through active or more dynamic forms of engagement in the process, whether it be workshops, open houses, and meetings, or passive or static information that they may have access to through websites, social media, and surveys. So it's important that we have the full range. It's important that we get as much participation as possible and have different vehicles in which to bring people to the process. One of those means in terms of the online presence, and I'll just refer to this one, highlight this one in particular, it's a building and a continuation of what you've already started in terms of the website itself, which would be continuing to keep people updated on the overall project process, resources that are available throughout the process. And there's also dynamic components to this that will handle surveys, discussion forums, and so forth. And for that, we'll be using a group of PlaceSpeak, which is, again, an active forum for ongoing dialogue, and it will be managed. But it tends to specifically, and we've used it on a couple other plans before, but it tends to authenticate the contributions that individuals make. In other words, you can actually place where they live. Everything is anonymous, but you can place where the comments and generally are coming from, who's participating, what the distribution is, but it does authenticate the people providing comments on the website itself. So that's one means certainly for the public to become engaged in the process. In addition to that, there's other forums, as I mentioned, and there's other points of contact, not just with yourselves throughout the process, a series of meetings and presentations at specific milestones with council. There'll be some workshops that we will hold with the public, and as I mentioned, in order to get that participation, we want to make sure that we have invited specific individuals, interest groups throughout the community that represent the vast range, whether it be residents or different interest groups in the community, to those workshops. There'll also be public open houses that are being held throughout the remainder of the project. There's a transportation advisory committee that is obviously overseeing this work and will meet several times throughout the process. And there's a technical working group that's representative of several agencies that are participating and in the process, such as provincial, regional, Port, BC Ferries, and others, and I'll mention a few others in a bit. But it's important that they be at the table through the process. Even though you're looking at strategic initiatives that are about the city, it's important that they understand your aspirations for other agencies as well that do affect how people travel within the city as well as to and from the city. So in terms of some of the individuals or some of the groups that we have identified to date, and we're still continuing to work on this to make sure that when we do have these workshop events that we know we've got as many of these key interest groups covered off, and certainly there's more to that, including ICF and others who will be identified through the process and be invited to participate in the process in various capacities. So the idea is to make sure we've opened it up as much as possible, and that we have targeted events for different groups of people. There's been much work done already on the overall transportation plan, and many issues have started to flush themselves out. It's a bit unusual that we come to a plan where there's been a lot of so much work done, and that a lot of these issues have started to already come to the surface, and it actually helps to shape the things that we're going to focus on in the plan itself, and get on with some of the technical work as well as some of the non-technical work. But through that plan, there's been some surveys that have been undertaken in terms of which elements of the plan is most important to you to gauge community interests, which was a part of the public survey process and the preamble to the stage we're at now. And many of the priorities in terms of what people said were the most important things for us to deal with or in the city to deal with as part of that plan include transit, pedestrians, cycling, and integrating land use and transportation amongst other topics. There's a whole bunch of another layer of information that gives us a sense of, under each of these categories, what are some of the key issues the community wants to see addressed as part of the plan process. So again, we have a fountain of information from the work you've already done, and we'll synthesize that. We'll make sure we don't retrace that ground, but we'll make sure we synthesize what we're hearing in some of these areas and the themes that are coming up or the messages that are coming up in each of these areas that I won't spend too much time on here. Specifically, as I mentioned earlier, the transportation plan will address each of these modes individually and collectively. It's important that at the end of the plan that these, and as we go through the plan, that they can be integrated. But it's important that we understand the facts around some of these areas and these topics, and we identify existing and future challenges, much of which builds off what you've already done to date. The overall plan itself is really it will start to look ahead in terms of some of the historical growth patterns and the work that has been done, I know, for the city and its ongoing work around population projections and growth projections for the city. But it's also looking at and typically what affects transportation or what affects much of the community resilience is in many areas through the population growth and the changes in the shape of your community in future, not just transportation. But it also influences some of the other important assets and other important aspirations, such as environmental or greenhouse gas emissions. It's also shaped by some of the ongoing plans. We're not starting from scratch here. We're looking at how do we build on current plans and policies of council, strategic plans, community and energy mission study, shaping our future, and there are other plans that are being prepared, as I mentioned, that will also shape the transportation plan, but it also helps the plan to shape some of those other initiatives as well. Typically when we look at, and I'll just mention, when we do transportation plans, we tend to look at where the stakes are for the community. It's not just about mobility, it's about many other stakes that you have, and we're trying to make sure that transportation continues to support other aspirations as opposed to just be the lead aspiration here. At the end of the day, it's really a means to another end that you've identified in many of those plans. In some of the other information that's been captured, and this gives you a sense of the overall mode share patterns for the city in terms of the percentage of people that drive, use transit, walk, or bike to work, based on 2006 census. When you compare the city in terms of the walk, bike, and transit mode shares, it's very similar to other communities that are of that mid-sized scale in BC. A little different in the sense of the amount that is transit, but overall looking at about 13% or so that either walk, bike, or use transit. Looking ahead, we see that there's market for expansion and growth of these targets towards other aspirations, perhaps in the area of transit as well as walking and cycling. But overall, the city's doing pretty good in some of these modes, particularly in the area of walking. Much of this is also shaped by land use. At the end of the day, the main dynamic that affects mode choice is not just whether it's attractive, it's safe, it's comfortable for people to walk, bike, or use transit, but it's in the land use patterns. And you can see by this graphic here in front of you, this is showing you the mode choice patterns where for the core areas of the city, for those walking, cycling, or using transit, the mode share is typically higher in the core areas of the city versus the outlying areas of the suburban areas around the city. So it's important to recognize going ahead that the land use component does play an important role in that, and certainly shapes many of the patterns that we'll be looking at through this process. So it's important to keep that in mind and put it in context when we start to set targets or we start to set aspirations or even directions for other modes. Looking ahead, there's a few events that are coming up, but one of those is just extending the communications to the community in the next day or two towards what's going to be happening over the coming months, to update them on the process, and to schedule these open houses and stakeholder workshop events, which are now tentatively, I think, scheduled for October 30th and November 6th. So that's the overview of the overall plan, the process, and where we think we're going in the process. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to the delegation?
I do.
Okay, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Steiner, very much. Somewhere in here, about 4 slides back, you use cities such as Prince George, Kelowna, Kamloops, places we normally compare ourselves to. Mm-hmm. Have you done transportation master plans for any of those municipalities?
I have. We've done work for Kelowna, Kamloops, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, and Surrey, and Victoria.
How long did those take? And the reason I'm asking is, you did mention that a fair bit of work has been done already, and I don't see an end here until the end of next year at the earliest.
Right.
It seems like a long time.
Typical plans will take anywhere from a year to 2 years. And it's all connected to the amount of consultation and engagement, mm-hmm. and the number of agencies usually drive that. The work itself probably could be tightened quite a bit, but the communications and external engagement is actually really, at the end of the day, that's where the time is affected, but it's also what probably enriches the overall process at the end of the day.
We now have someone who can help you communicate, you know. So thank you for that.
I sometimes need that too,
Okay, you'll have it.
especially at home.
Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess from my perspective, it's along the lines of Councillor Padgett. A 2008 OCP puts us 5 years ago, post-crash economy. Committee was formed in 2010, and I was on the committee, and we talked about a 2-year plan at that point. And we also talked about North Vancouver having done theirs in 6 months and West Vancouver in 9 months. We had the document. I might be wrong in the 6 to 9, but they had no public engagement. They just went with their staff and went at it. But now we're going to be 5 years out from our OCP.
Right.
Is that a concern to you? And because it's post-crash, 2008, we adopted our OCP in just before the previous council. Is that a concern for you? And I noticed on your slide some 2006 census data. You obviously use the 2012, but
Yeah, 11, yeah.
the concern for me is how much has the economy shifted to make more modes of those right there, more people walking, more, because even post-Olympics in Vancouver, far more people are taking the bus.
Right, yeah.
So can you relate that to our length of time on
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there, I guess, and maybe there's a couple points I'll just clarify. When we worked on the North Vancouver plan, both the district and the city, and I can assure you those weren't short processes. One was staff-based, but there's another component of it that took a while to come together. But there was a lot of technical studies that took a long time coming together. So I'm not sure where the 6-month reference may have come from. So I'll have to confirm that, but I know personally because we did them. It didn't happen in 6 months. It took a little longer. In terms of the timeline, we always have information that has various dates attached to it, and you know, there's economic cycles, there's changes in gas prices that do influence people's ability and affordability to choose to drive, and it certainly increase the demand for transit in a lot of cities, a lot of communities. At the end of the day, it's not where the buck stops. It really is about assessing the conditions within the community, looking at the dynamics of land use changes within the community, and taking the projection forward, which, while we're projecting 20-25-year land uses, that may be 30 years, or it could be 15. But again, you have your sights set on what your planned land uses are, what your planned growth is, and we can kind of use that as the guide to not say it's going to stop in 2031 or 2036, but it's a direction, it's a strategic direction, and it will shape how you want to get there. The important part is the first 5 years and 10 years of these plans. That's where it has to be very real in terms of what the directions are. So we'll try to massage that to what you think are the best growth scenarios, or your staff think are the best growth scenarios, and reflecting your OCP. But we certainly respect that there's going to be changes to that just based on the economic cycles.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to add and ask you the question about the difference in price of gas, because I think that'll be a huge thing, and of course it's continually rising all the time too. Yeah. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your report this evening. You mentioned, although this is an Nanaimo transit growth plan, you mentioned in your materials you focused a bit on the regional growth strategy and shaping our future. How much emphasis will this plan give to the connectivity between Nanaimo and the Mid-Island region or other island communities in the mainland?
Right. Yeah, I kind of glossed over that. In fact, I may not have said enough about it in terms of the actual parts of the puzzle we're looking at. One is the travel in and around the city, and that tends to be probably a significant portion of what the actual activity is. The other part are those coming to and from the city. and certainly looking at it from different modes, whether it be the highway, whether it be from the ferry, whether it be from the air, to understand what those dynamics are. But the other part are the regional dynamics, and we do want to understand those travel patterns as well and access those sources, which you've already got some information on. So that's part of that external dynamic, which is will be a prominent part of our work.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
I see, Councillor Anderson, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Steiner for making the presentation tonight. This transportation master plan is something that really needs to move forward, and it's something that the city definitely needs in order to make sure that we are more sustainable as we move forward. So thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you over the next year. And also our staff as well should be commended for the work that they've been doing over the last few months as well. So that's it. Thank you.
I just want to also add my appreciation, Mr. Steiner, because I think that the projections that we have is that by 2020, in about 8 years' time, the population of Nanaimo will exceed 100,000. So obviously having a transportation plan that addresses the needs in the future is important. So thank you for the presentation. I enjoyed it very much.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, the next delegation we have here is Mr. Bernie Dumas, President and Chief Executive Officer, Nanaimo Port Authority, to give a PowerPoint presentation on the Marina Development Project. Mr. Dumas.
Thank you very much, Your Worship and Council, for the opportunity to visit with you tonight. I was asked to attend to bring you up or give you an update of the status of the project which the Port is engaged with Pacific Northwest Marina Group. And I have a short little presentation here which hopefully will answer and clarify a number of the questions that have been asked over the last few weeks. And then perhaps I can take some questions from Council and Your Worship. Just to give everyone a clear picture, the project is a lease of a federal water lot, which also includes the boat basin marina, which is currently operated by the Port Authority, and the replacement of old dock structures and ramps with new modern marine infrastructure. The cost of the project is estimated at $9.3 million, which is completely 100% private funding. The component is Pacific Northwest Marina Group, which is a Vancouver-based company. The project timeline, the estimate time to finalize a lease agreement is January 2013, but it's based on the finalizing the necessary approvals, which we expect can be done between November and December. The marina construction will be done in 2 phases and with a completion at sometime late 2013. And the lease agreement, which the Port hopes to achieve with Pacific Northwest, will be a term of 30 years. Community contact, May 29th, the Port Authority made the official announcement along with Pacific Northwest Marina Group. June 13th, there was a public house meeting over at Protection Island, which was a joint between the Port Authority and Pacific Northwest. The 28th of June, we had an open house at the Coast Bastion Hotel that lasted from 1 o'clock to 8. The Pacific Northwest Marina Group rented a kiosk from the Port in the Pioneer Plaza, which has been in operation since July, 2 days a week, and if I'm not mistaken, Grant, I think we finished off in September. The Port Authority had meetings with the Underwater Harvesters Association. We've had meetings with the tugboat operators here in Nanaimo. We've been in discussion with Nanaimo First Nation since May the 17th, and we've been providing some updates on our website as well as the Pacific Northwest Marina Group's website. So additional details. So the Nanaimo Port Authority remains the landlord of the marina. We are creating a regular commercial lease agreement, which we do throughout the channel here for various other companies, a variety of companies. The lease agreement provides the Port Authority with approval and some alterations that may happen in the marina in future. The Pioneer Plaza, the parking lot, the seaplane terminal, and the walkway will remain under the control of the Port Authority. The Protection Island Ferry remains in the same location, which was negotiated and arranged between Pacific Northwest Marina Group and ourselves, and they're going to talk to the operator to improve the access and waiting room on that location. It's a larger design to offer more space for 3-hour dinghy tie-ups for all visitors. The Port Authority is to continue to control the anchorage area out in the harbor under our regular permit system. The Port Authority will no longer compete with our own tenants in the marine operations. Existing marina size that the Port Authority currently operates is about 8,500 linear feet, and the Pacific Northwest Marina Group is going to be looking at a footprint around 10,000 linear feet. The Pacific Northwest Marina Group has redesigned the marina to increase the 20-foot slips by 40% to accommodate what has been going through the local community discussions. The Port Authority will establish a commercial fishing fleet offloading area at the assembly wharf to accommodate the fleet's ability to discharge their harvest. We needed to get it to market. The Pacific Northwest Marina Group is not restricting the commercial fleet from moorage in the new marina. The fleet is welcome, and as long as they adhere to the rules of safety and environmental concerns, which the Port Authority was also enforcing while we were handling the marina. The Port Authority is currently working with the tugboat operators here to find and relocate them within the harbor limits. The marina restaurants will remain with the new design. And the Pacific Northwest is to create a public water level access boardwalk to the marina concept, and I'll show you some image photographs of what that may look like when it's done. And the new marina design is a greener marina. The new infrastructure will be far more sensitive to the cruise-out piles that we currently have in our marina today. So this is an aerial view image of what the marina will look like when it is complete. This is another one from the walkway. This is a section of the marina which Pacific Northwest is developing for increased public access of the marina. They have an area there where people can mingle and sit down and enjoy the marina. This is the boardwalk, which I mentioned, that the Pacific Northwest Marina Group will install, which sort of goes parallel to the above walkway which the Port Authority put in back in the late 80s. This is the design of the marina. The very faint lines are the area which is the existing marina, and the bluer lines are showing exactly how the new marina structure will be set up. And it'll be done in 2 phases. And the Port Authority will retain a few hundred linear feet, which is close to the floatplane terminal, which is really called B-Dock or B-Float today, that the port will use for special and emergency use. And that's pretty well the presentation. I'm up for any questions that Council and Your Worship may have on it. And I have Grant Rogers, who's the president of Pacific Northwest Marina Group, with us this evening. And if I can't answer it, I'm sure Grant will be able to. So,
okay, thank you very much. I am sure we have a few questions. One, I just had a couple, if I can, Mr. Dumas, to start. The $9.3 million that the contract is dealing with, is most or all of that going to be in new construction in the marina?
Grant, maybe you can want to take that one.
Your Worship, thank you for the question. Yeah, the $9.3 million is almost all of it is directly related to construction, new construction in the water, nothing on the land side.
Okay. And one concern that's been expressed to me is access, particularly on the new concrete walkway, the floating walkway that's parallel with the raised walkway. And will access be available 24/7? Is there any restrictions or gates, or will the public have access, not unlimited, but mostly unlimited?
Sure. Our intention is that that will be accessible at all times. Many of the newer port developments, newer waterfront developments around the Pacific Northwest are leaving their docks open to public access, and that actually enhances security. The only caveat I would put on this is if there was issues that couldn't be dealt with from either a security perspective or any late night issues, there may be a late night that may be required to put gates at the top late at night and lock them. We don't intend to put any in to begin with, and we're hoping that both security cameras, on-site people, and the public themselves will become the security.
Okay. And the final question I have, and there are some other from council, I just wondered maybe, Mr. Dumas, if you could expand a little bit on one of the concerns that I've heard as well, and I understand in conversations with you that it has been largely looked after, and that is that the lessee, PMNG, isn't really able to make any major changes under the terms of the contract without consent from the Nanaimo Port Authority.
Well, Your Worship, the lease agreement and the MOU that we created with Pacific Northwest gives the Port Authority a review and an approval basis, in the sense that anything major that's going to change in the original design, that we have an agreement where Pacific Northwest will consult with the port, and the port will have the ability to discuss it. Okay. And prior to the changes being made.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now we'll turn it over. We have Councillor Anderson, Councillor Pachi, Councillor Crees, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Dumas, for your presentation today. One of the questions that I do have is, as a federal agency, how are you accountable to the public, is one of the questions that I have.
Well, the Port Authority is a federal agency, and we have a responsibility to accommodate as much as we can for the community. The Port Authority, the marina has always been a user, public marina, and the Port Authority has been able to accommodate the community in many initiatives over the years, and we feel that we have accommodated the general public in the use and the change of the use of the marina in this project.
And follow up to that, one of the biggest concerns that most of us on council and myself have heard is concerns around access for protection islanders. And one of the main concerns that they do have is that what happens after, because I've understood that the Marker Group has said that they will give up to a 5-year lease, is that correct? From the year-to-year lease?
You mean on the moorage?
Yes, on the moorage.
Yeah, just to clarify, the Port Authority has been doing it on a year-to-year basis. The agreement we have with Pacific Northwest enables them, if they wish, to extend that to 5 years. We can even have discussions together if they want to do it longer, but it's, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
So currently, what's existing in the marina, the only longer than 1 year lease terms that exist down there are the commercial activities, and at the moment, we have no intention of going beyond a 1 year lease or 1 year use of the water. Now, what we are open to is looking at a different lease arrangement for the smaller slips. Now, one of the things that you should understand about marina design is almost never would you put in 20-foot slips this day and age. And we have specifically built 20-foot slips or designed them at this point because there seems to be a market for it. We're in this business to sell slip space, so the reason we're building it is we've been listening to the Protection Islanders, their needs for small slip space, which is not normal. And this is not a normal situation. It's a commuter activity. So there is a huge amount of security in the fact that we're actually building something that wouldn't be used by the large marinas around BC. In fact, most of them are converting over currently. We will look at a 5-year lease. I'm not sure it's feasible to go to a 30-year lease. We have lease terms with the Port Authority that will be reviewed over certain periods of time. So to commit for longer than those interim lengths may not be feasible.
And I have 2 more questions, and then I'm done. The other question that I have is, so earlier when our mayor was discussing with you about the ability for the Port Authority to make a decision over any major changes to the marina. So my question to you is that if after, let's say, 8 years of this going ahead, that one day, let's say Pacific Northwest says that they don't want Protection Islanders in that area, what would the Port Authority do in that regard?
Well, I don't think it has to strictly be focused on Protection Island. Again, the marina is a public user marina. The analysis that Pacific Northwest has done indicates that the marina here in Nanaimo is somewhat unique in relation to the industry on the coast, that 20-foot slips are more needed here than other locations. So I think as long as the market is here for 20-foot slips, that the marina operators will continue to have them available.
So, and my last question, so other than there being a market for 20-foot slips, are there any other securities that the public has other than if there's a market for 20-foot slips?
Again, the marina is a public marina, and it's available for use for anyone. I'm not quite sure, Councillor, where you're going with this, in the sense that the marina is a user marina, in the sense that anyone can use the marina and get moorage on a yearly basis, be it Protection Island or be it somebody in Gabriola Island or someone in northern Nanaimo. So the market is there. It'll be retained. Are you asking me if we're going to have a special arrangement exclusively for Protection Island?
No, that is not what I was asking. What I was saying was that in regards to the public, if in some circumstances that market were to decline, and there are a vast majority of people who continue to use that, I want to know what public access will continue for the majority of the public if that happens to decline.
So as I mentioned, we have a mechanism within the lease that gives us the ability to discuss and negotiate. So if Pacific Northwest takes on the marina and 8 or 10 years from now decides that they don't want any 20-foot slips, they're going to have to talk to us. Right, and we're going to have...
Can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe another example that we can use is if the 60-foot slips, if all of a sudden there's no use for 60-foot slips, would we consider reorganizing the marina or putting in smaller slips? Of course we would. That marina needs to be full. And to make it economically feasible, it needs to be full. And you know, if the 20-foot slips are to disappear, as far as the user goes, maybe everyone on Protection Island buys a 40-foot boat. I don't know. But we do intend to be responsive as business people to make sure that marina is full. So you can look at this many different ways, but we intend to try to respond to what the market needs are, not any one particular user group.
Thank you.
Councillor Pachi.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Dumas. Thank you, Mr. Roger. I'm really glad both of you are here because even though Councillor Anderson has asked most of the questions that I had in mind, it is nice to have you here so we can ask some of the other questions. Do you understand the concern that Protection Islanders have as citizens of this municipality who feel that they are not assured the mobility that our strategic plan, for instance, talks about, and by virtue of the previous delegation, you can see how important transportation and mobility issues are to us. So let me ask that first question then. Do you have an understanding for the concerns of the Protection Islanders as citizens of Nanaimo and their mobility issues?
We do. Do we feel it's solely the Port Authority's responsibility? We don't. So we fully understand the unique aspect of Protection Island. The Port Authority has been a very good supporter of Protection Island for the past 40 years. We've negotiated with the new operator the ability to retain the ferry in the new design. We've sat down to make sure the 20-foot slips, which are utilized, as Grant mentioned, predominantly by individuals at Protection Island, are covered. Our responsibility, as we see it, is to be accommodating and attempt to cover as many needs as we can for the community, and we feel that we've done so.
And I think they appreciate that. In my talks with them, they have commented on the fact that the percentage of 20-foot slips has been increased to their satisfaction. They've told me over and over again that they're not opposed to the plan itself. But you also understand that these are citizens of our municipality, and we feel possibly a kind of a different responsibility towards them than you do. So from what I see, we still have a dilemma, because I don't think that anything that has been said this evening, all in good faith, and all completely within your jurisdiction and outside ours, I might add, I don't think I've heard anything that would satisfy the Protection Islanders that we have the duty to look after. So if I asked you, would you look one more time, maybe together with us, together with the Port Authority, with the Marker Group, with the city, with the Protection Islanders, to see if there is not some kind of improvement that we get over what is being offered
Councillor,
today?
what improvement do you think that we haven't touched upon?
The tenure. The lack of tenure is a very serious issue to them, and
They don't have it today.
Let me finish. I sympathize with what you are saying. You're in the marina business and the Port Authority. I have spent considerable time going over your letters of patent, and I can tell you I could have done some better reading over the weekend than that. It's pretty dull. But the long and the short of it is, we have citizens who, among other things, other than the lack of mobility, feel that, for instance, the value of the property is affected by the lack of tenure for them to be able to move from their home to their work or to shop or whatever it is that they're going to do here. That's a serious concern, and that is one issue that I believe this council has to at least make a good faith attempt with you and with Mr. Rogers to see if we cannot come to some kind of solution. It's very cold for you to say 1 year, that's it. There's got to be a better solution than that. I'll leave it at that, please.
If you don't mind me commenting a little bit.
Please.
I think we're talking about two different things, at least from the perspective of the City Council and your taxpayers. Yeah. Any accommodation that's made at the marina that would be, I believe, that would be supported by Council would have to be applicable for everyone. So there's two different things here. There's the ferry and the 3-hour tie-up. And then there's the individual 20-foot slips. The individual 20-foot slips, that if we were to turn that whole marina into 20-foot slips, it's still not enough for the whole subdivision out there. And so really we're dealing with individuals on the 20-foot slips. The 3-hour tie-up and the ferry service are things which I think the council and taxpayers should be concerned as, and they affect Protection Island as a whole. Those are certainly things we're willing to talk about, but we're paying market rates or better for the lease, and so we have to make the business make sense. If there is something that the port and the city would like to do to ensure that those two things are there for a long period of time, I think that's open to discussion. The 20-foot slips, we're dealing with individuals. Be aware of that, because that's a very critical difference.
Okay, just one follow-up, if I may. Very quickly. Protection Islanders have told me that in their negotiation with you, with the market group, they were asked on a number of occasions by you, why is the city not at your side? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And why would you have said that?
Because the questions that were being directed towards us were really related to the no charge sections of this and the ferry service. So that's where my answer was, look, this sounds to me like something that is an access issue, and it's an access issue for all of Protection Island. But that also sounds like an Nanaimo Council issue. That's why I asked them, why are you not talking to Nanaimo Council about this?
Could you have approached us?
Possibly, but I don't know what the solutions are for everyone on Protection Island. I think that's up to them as a group to come forward to suggest what they'd like to see and to get the support of Nanaimo Council. That's my feeling as a private businessman.
Thank you.
Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Dumas. I'm almost embarrassed to ask this question because it's not as serious as, well, maybe it is. You're going to have to switch to a different way of thinking now. What improvements will be made down there for firefighting purposes?
Okay, you go ahead.
All of the docks will have fully up to new standards firefighting right to the end of the docks. So there will be pressurized lines there all year round.
One more. Yeah. And access, where would the trucks roll in?
They'll end up going into the plaza.
That main circular area there?
And they would have to run. But the Port Authority and the City Fire Department have been working very, very close together over the last year. We've been doing cross-training. City Council approved to put a specialized fire pump on the patrol boat of the Port Authority. And we're in much better shape now than we were about a year and a half ago with fighting fires in the Inner Harbor with the apparatus that is available to us now. And the new design of the marina will have a better water usage that would be available to the firefighters to tackle out.
One quick one. And that gassing up station, is that going to stay there?
There will still be a fuel wharf on the. It's not decided yet as to whether it'll be a brand new wharf or whether it'll be the existing wharf. But we're working with Suncor in discussions with that right now.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. I'm gratified to hear that the Port Authority is going to continue to be the landlord over the next 30 years. The Port Authority, in my estimation, and I think in most of our citizens' estimation, has been a wonderful partner for this community and done a ton of amazing improvements to our waterfront. And thank you publicly for the wonderful walkway and all of the amenities you've built. My one question for you is the 20% increase in the 20-foot slips. Today, currently, how often is that? Are those slips filled to capacity?
You probably know it.
Well, I think right now it's actually what we've designed is a 40% increase
40%.
in area for boats that would be designated for 20 feet. Now, there's a waiting list at the moment, so we've analyzed the waiting list. We've also worked with the group on Protection Island to discuss with everyone on Protection Island and essentially come up with a list of people who would like to be able to have a 20-foot slip there. And I think what we had done was redesign based on that. And there's no guarantees that more lots won't be developed out there, because I understand there are more pieces of land that could be developed. If we were to deal with each piece of land on Protection Island and assign them a 20-foot slip for 30 years, there wouldn't be a marina down there. And that's our difficulty, is nailing that number is really difficult. So we really do need the market to be there, as well as, because if there is no market for Protection Island, there is no market for 20-foot boats.
No. A follow-up, if I could, Your Worship. How many, do we know, have we done a survey as to how many of our Protection Island citizens have boats that access Nanaimo by private boat?
Well, there's lots of different ways to access from Protection Island. So there's everything from canoes and kayaks out there right through to people that have 35, 40-foot boats tied to their docks. And the majority of commuters seem to be in a range between 12 feet and 20 feet, and that's why we decided 20-foot slips would be appropriate. I believe the survey showed that there would be approximately 110 total possible users, and that some of them already had slips elsewhere.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. I have a few questions. As it relates to the approximate $10 million asset infrastructure, and thank you for your confidence in our city to make such an investment to beautify what is already a fabulous waterfront, to the credit and tribute of the NPA. With that, will that adjust our PILT agreement whatsoever with the city?
I don't know. We would have to, we have an arrangement with the city. It's under negotiation. The lease will result in Pacific Northwest Marine Group paying taxes.
And will we see, in view of the fact that the improvements, will there be any lesser or greater PILT arrangement in lieu of taxes? And perhaps maybe that would be a conversation directed to staff.
Well, Your Worship, I can respond to say that at present there's been no changes negotiated to the agreement on payments in lieu of taxes or PILTs. But it also is true that the new investor in the marina will be liable for property taxes. So under the current scenario, there'd be a net increase in revenue to the taxpayers.
Thank you. And another couple of questions, if I may, Your Worship. The Protection Island ferry service remains and will not be impacted as we know it today, other than improved?
Well, it's a private operator who handles that service. The Port Authority has been giving 3-year terms for the permit or a license to operate in the marina. The design that Pacific Northwest has created in concert with the port has the Protection Island Ferry in the exact location as it is today, and Pacific Northwest would be negotiating a separate agreement. What we've done is taken our agreement currently in existence and we'll sign it over to Pacific Northwest to make it a seamless change, and then the operator of the ferry will have to sit down and create a contract with Pacific Northwest.
Thank you. And the commuter destination location?
Sorry?
The commuter destination location will be an enhanced?
Well, it's going to be completely different. The Port Authority really never designated a precise tie-up dinghy location, really. It was whatever was available throughout the marina. The setup with Pacific Northwest Marina Group is that they've designated a location right beside, I think, the ferry terminal on that side, and they're working it out around 200 linear feet of 3-hour free user tie-up in that location.
Thank you. Well, I may be...
Maybe I can just comment a little bit on that. Standardly, a transient or a destination marina will have a 3-hour dinghy tie-up. It's intended for people that anchor out, and this one's a little bit different because there's a commuter base. There are some similar examples around the Pacific Northwest. Roche Harbor is one. They have a bunch of people that live on islands and they commute in. Roche Harbor has about 70 feet of dinghy tie-up, and we think the range here is going to be between 100 and 200 feet, but take in mind, you have to take to mind that 200 feet with dinghies will accommodate an enormous number of boats. Right now, we've been talking with the current manager of the marina, and he estimates that sort of the peak is usually between 12 and 14 boats at any one time that are in. So what we don't want to do is designate so much space that it sits empty all the time, and that's something that's critical. We're still evaluating that. We have worked with Protection Islanders to try to understand how much traffic is going back and forth, and we're also talking with the manager.
Thank you very much. And Your Worship, with your indulgence, the reason for my questions is for those that aren't here in the audience, perhaps, that we may have a little bit more knowledge than those that would like to have some answers to those questions. And to Councillor Patchy, who indicated that perhaps if the possibility for you to have approached the city, and for those in the audience and beyond, we do have a city appointee on and we have a Port Liaison Committee, and perhaps it would be prudent for us as Council also to ask our appointee to come to Council with updates of developments and as they move forward. Mm-hmm. And so that might be a step in a direction that we could also take to help this as we move forward. Thank you.
We've received a great number of emails on this subject, as you can well imagine. I have an open door type of policy. They are being answered as quickly as we get them. I had a lengthy one on Sunday night from members of Protection Island, which I answered today, which I hopefully will provide them with some clarity on the process here, type thing. But thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to take you back to the discussion about over time, if you begin to contemplate changes to the agreement, that the port has to agree. Is that correct?
Well, the port, the mechanism that we've created between ourselves gives the Port Authority the ability to comment and be reviewed on the changes. If it's a sensible change, they can go ahead. If it's something that we have a concern with and may affect the community, we'll say something.
Is that the extent of your input into it then, would be to comment on it? You don't
we create a lot of commercial leases here in Nanaimo. We do a lot of marinas here. We leave it up to the operator to operate their business. We've been doing this for a long time, and we know exactly certain things that they may do that may concern us, and we have open discussions with those operators, and I'm sure we'll have a similar one here with Grant.
So, just one last one. So, would you commit to Council then, if there are substantive changes considered in this agreement, would you commit to consult with Council?
It's something we can discuss. I think the Port Authority has a liaison committee with the city. I think that is probably the best avenue to address those type of questions, which gives a free access to council, and we can table those at those meetings and advise council of some of the changes that may occur or may not, whatever. I think that's probably the best way to go.
I think that a commitment to some degree to discuss with us, whether it be via the liaison committee or with council, is really important to council's role, our role to represent the interests of citizens. And that isn't just the Protection Island citizens. I think you know that the boat basin as it is today is a really iconic piece of Nanaimo. It's mentioned many times that it's on the front covers of a lot of our tourist material, et cetera. So it's really important to us that you continue to consult with us, and in particular, if there's going to be substantive changes, that there be a real commitment to discuss those substantive changes with us so that we can express to you the concerns of the citizens.
Well, you know, the Port Authority has been operating that marina for a very, very long time. We are truly a good supporter of this community based on a number of things that we do every year. I see no reason why we can't discuss these things and these type of questions at the liaison meetings with the city and have a free discussion on it. I see no reason why we can't do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I'm going to ask every question all over again. No, not seriously. I appreciate the fact that it sounds like you're working closer. We need closer relationships with all of our agencies and our agencies to communicate with our public so we know what's going on. It's far easier to assemble that. Our RCMP Coastal, where are they going?
Well, we're actually talking to them quite a bit the last few weeks, and they're actually looking, I can't give you all the details today, but enhancing their operation here in Nanaimo. So we actually have a separate conversation altogether with them about what they may need and require in the future. It's
a couple follow-ups on that too. The commercial fleet, it came to my attention that you had a meeting with the commercial fishing fleet, but it was in their fishing season. Was that an oversight? Because those type of communications are important too. And with that, on the commercial follow-up, you want them to move to the Assembly Wharf for load and unload for some of that. Will that cause any problem with higher MARSAC levels if there's an American ship in?
No, we have the ability to change the that security aspect of it. The Assembly Wharf would give a larger area. The congestion of parking and discharging things in the plaza now is chaotic and dangerous. So the Assembly Wharf area that we need to sit down and talk to the commercial fleet a little bit more on, because they have a variety of vessels and needs. But we ended up talking to the GUI duct operators just recently. We'll give them a better location. It's open 24/7. We have security there, and they have a much larger area to set up and discharge. So there's still a little bit more technical information that we need from the commercial fleet, and we'll be asking them once we get to that point. But it would be a far better place for them to discharge their catch than in the plaza.
Yeah, totally appreciate the fact that the commercial fleet's important to us. If I can have a couple others. You mentioned taxes when Councillor Besserick mentioned...
It's not a subject I really like talking about.
No, yeah, I love that. You said there would be some taxes to the city. That's a water lease?
I can answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Councillor Kipp, it's a... when it moves from a federally operated facility to a sublet property, it is subject to taxes by the city, and we've had Altus Group take a look at what that would be, and it'll be in the range between $130,000 and $160,000 a year, and that's consistent with other marinas that we're involved with. So.
Okay, thank you. And one other to Bernie. I appreciated the fact that you said you don't feel that it's not your sole responsibility to help facilitate Protection Island. So from my perspective, to back up what Councillor Brennan says, that sounds to me that you're willing to work with them as much as possible, and both groups are, and to keep us informed and them informed.
Very much so, right? I think it's, as all of you have mentioned in your questions, it's a rather unique arrangement. And, I'm enjoying this community as much as you all. So good dialogue is good. Can we do everything for everyone? No. Can we try to do as much as we can? Yes.
Appreciate that, Rick.
Okay.
Okay, I see no further questions. Thank you both for coming. I just want to say that the port has been, for over 40 years, a very great and loyal supporter of the city. And I think the reality is, and I think we're all talking around it, but you're aware or cognizant of the concerns by Protection Islanders. It would be ludicrous to think that you wouldn't keep that in mind on a regular basis. The city will be here to help provide you if your memory fails. And I see this as a very positive step, and I think we have a great opportunity to work together on this.
Thank you very much, Your Worship and Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is the Mayor's report, which I don't have anything to discuss. However, on my left, for those that are really paying acute attention to me, we have a gentleman dressed with an absolutely gorgeous pink shirt on, and it's my understanding that Councillor Anderson would like to make a comment at this point. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm assuming you mean Councillor Greaves. I'm joking, of course. Anyways, I just wanted to make a comment. It's not often that I wear pink. It was actually quite hard to find what I'm wearing right now. But as many of you know, this past week there was the death of Amanda Todd, who was a bullied teenager in Port Coquitlam. And as you can see, some of my colleagues are also wearing pink to recognize the harm that bullying has on our communities. And it's important to realize that bullying affects everyone, young and old, and bullying should not be acceptable in any type of circumstance. So I hope that the people who are watching this will talk with their children, their friends and family about the harm that bullying has on our society. And I would prefer that we are not wearing pink as a sign of mourning, but to show that bullying should not be tolerated under any circumstances. So I'd hope that we could all send a message to people who bully others by saying that we will not stand up, or we will stand up for others, and we will not stay silent when others are hurt, and we will stand up for those who are bullied, and that we will report those incidents of bullying. So it's up to all of us to stand up for others when we see people being bullied, and even if you don't know them, just by asking, "Are you okay?" is a step in the right direction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good point. Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. It's unfortunately it's a little bit late. I was going to attempt to comment before the major group of people left, but I wanted to say to those in the audience, and certainly those that are still here, thank you for showing the respect to the speakers. It's probably one of the more courteous audiences that we've had here, and it's greatly appreciated. I thank you for observing the rights, and I can assure those people that are still with Protection Island, the city will remember you and will look after your needs. The next item is item 8, the Community Safety and Development, Social Planning and Advisory Committee, Community Service Grants, to be introduced by our SPAC Chair, Councillor Brennan. That's not SPANK, it's SPAC. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, to clarify, I am not SPAC.
Chair, I'm a member of SPAC. Terry Flower actually is the chair of SPAC, so it could be either Councillor Anderson or myself who gave this report, but Councillor Anderson had to miss that meeting when we approved these. So I'm moving that Council approve the allocation of the second round of community service grants as noted below.
Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And you're moving the entire list before us?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry?
Unless you wanted me
No, that's fine. That's what we voted on, and I think that's what we have duly noted. I thought I'd ask before the fact rather than after the fact. It gets a little lumpy then. We're going to move on then to item 8B, the housing agreement, rooming house at 427 Milton Street. Staff recommendation the Council receive the report pertaining to housing agreement bylaw 2012 number 5, say again, 7157.
So
moved and seconded.
As amended, that report.
As amended, correct. Is no questions on it? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's a bylaw related, and the bylaw is that Housing Agreement Bylaw 2012 number 7157 to permit a rooming house with 12 sleeping units at 427 Milton Street pass first reading. Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Maybe the same mover and seconder can do the second one as well, that the Housing Agreement Bylaw 2012 number 7157 pass second reading. And second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, the Housing Agreement Bylaw 2012 number 7157 pass third reading. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Development Permit DP 807 at 253 Victoria Roads. Staff recommendation the Council issue Development Permit number DP 807 at 253 Victoria Road to renew DP 631 with the following variances. The first, the required front yard setback is 3.5 meters. The proposed setback is 0.22 meters, a variance of 3.28 meters. The second is the requirement flanking street side yard is 3.5 meters. The proposed setback is 0.56 meters, a variance of 2.94 meters. Thirdly, the maximum lot coverage is 35%. The proposed lot coverage is 44.1%, a variance of 9.1%. And lastly, the maximum allowed small car parking space is 33% of the total required parking. The proposed small car count is 50% of the overall required parking spaces, a variance of 17%.
Move staff's recommendation.
Second.
1, 2, 3, and 4. Moved and seconded. I see Councillor Anderson. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question. I don't know if it's going to be on the same page as all of you, since I still am using the previous agenda. But on page 36, it says Design Advisory Panel recommendations they made. Recommendations such as to redesign the entranceway and other recommendations. I was just wondering whether or not all of those recommendations were accepted.
Yes, in response to Councillor Anderson, the applicant had made modifications to the design, and it came back, and the design panel accepted all the changes that had been made by the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions?
Your Worship, I did press the button.
Sorry?
I did press the button. I just wanted to comment that I was really happy to see the relaxation of the parking spot rules to allow for a greater number of small parking spaces, because that's a really good it's a good step. It's a small step, but it's a good step towards getting people out of their cars, and only one parking stall per unit, and I'm really happy to see that.
Good point. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a point that on page 36, the applicant made the necessary changes to respond to the DAP recommendation, and that the city's urban forestry coordinator notes that the trees are in the decline and need to be replaced. So the information is fully contained within the report to council.
Well, thank you, Councillor Bestwick. The reason that I asked this question is I wanted to know whether or not all of the recommendations were accepted. It does say that in the report, that some of the made the necessary changes, but that doesn't necessarily mean all the recommendations that were asked were actually implemented. So that's why I asked the question.
Councillor Kipp, is this on the same
Well, I'm answering it.
No debating, though.
Can staff verify for me, a proponent doesn't really actually have to agree with any or all of the advisory design panel's recommendation. It could refuse to and come and have council determine that decision. Am I correct? So what I'm saying that is it's not necessary for them to meet all of the design panel's recommendations.
Your Worship, there will be times when there will be discussion at the design panel, and the architect representing the applicant will explain the rationale behind a particular design feature or a design element. And so there are times when there will be some things that are raised at design panel which are not followed through with in the final design. But as the frequent occurrence is, it comes back back to the design panel with the modifications, whichever that are being, and then explained why some were followed up on and some were not, and the design panel then makes its recommendation to council on that basis. So it's not always 100%. There's sometimes architects have strong opinions, and there's sometimes disagreements, but there's an attempt to move the design forward, and the design panel will then make its recommendation.
There's times when the architects step out of the committee and won't review projects too, I understand. So yes, thank you.
Okay. Question on it. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to do development permit DP 808 at 4989 Wills Road. Staff recommendation of council issue development permit DP 808 at 4989 Wills Road, which would renew development permit DP 672 with the following variances. The first, the required front yard setback is 3 meters. The proposed building siting is 0.9 meters, a variance of 2.1 meters. Secondly, the building 1, the maximum height is 14 meters. The proposed building height is 15 meters, a variance of 1 meter. And finally, the third, building 2, the maximum building height is 14 meters. The proposed building height is 14.25 meters, a variance of 0.25 meters.
Staff's recommendation to renew.
Okay, moved and seconded. Moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Bestwick, did you have this?
Thank you, Richard. Just as it relates to the 2 commercial retail units, is there any indicator what the commercial use may end up being? Is there an indicator of what it might be?
Not at this stage, no.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into item E, the development variance permit DVP 201 at 945 Howard Avenue. Staff recommendation of council direct staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for development variance permit DVP 201 at 945 Howard Avenue that would legalize a secondary suite in an accessory building on a lot less than 800 square meters.
Your Worship, I'm going to remove myself from this discussion. It's a personal friend of mine.
Thank you. Let the record show that, please. Now, we could, if I could ask someone to move and second it to get it on the floor for discussion. Move and seconded. Discussion, and we have Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I'm having great difficulty with this one. The lot is too small. There's no alley, and it's not on a corner lot. And while I'm going to vote in favor of this, I'm going to have to ask a question to staff, which is, under what circumstances would you advise us not to do something like this, where 3 of the 3 requirements are not in place? I'm troubled by the request. I understand the applicant and where she comes from, and that's the only reason I'm going to be voting for it. But I would like to know, number 1, are we opening a Pandora's box? And number 2, as I said earlier, under what circumstances would you advise us not to approve something like this?
Mr. Tucker, you're on.
I think the way I'd approach that is in terms of when we initially introduced the idea of allowing secondary suites in accessory dwelling units. It was similar circumstances to this situation in that we were in the midst of an enforcement action when the complaint had been received about a secondary suite in an accessory dwelling unit. At that time, council directed us to prepare regulations that would allow for secondary suites under restricted circumstances, and we started at 10,000 square foot lots, corner lots, and laneways. When we brought in bylaw 4500, we moved it down to 800 square feet, so we were finding...
Square meters, I believe.
Sorry?
Meters. Square meters?
Square meters, sorry. What we were finding was we were the secondary suites and accessory buildings were acceptable on smaller lots. This is a unique circumstance, but if it follows the same pattern as the previous one, it may lead to changes in the regulations over time. But it's a chance to do it. As a staff recommendation to council, this is seen as a one-off. It's a unique situation, and maybe over time we'll find that further relaxation of those standards is appropriate. But at this point, we're taking the cautious approach on this one and suggesting that this one we should give consideration to.
Your Worship, I just want to expand on Mr. Tucker's comment about it's a unique situation. In this case, this is an existing structure that doesn't negatively impact, in our opinion, the character of the surrounding neighborhood, as it's set to the rear corner of the lot with minimal visibility from the street. And further, the existing homes on adjacent lots to the north and rear of the property are at a distance and won't be impacted by this. So we think this is a unique situation that allows for this to happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move into Development Variance Permit DVP 202 at 5477 Lost Lake Road. Oh, you better wait one. Okay. Is there a seconder? Okay, I see no discussion, and just, Councillor Brennan, we're on item F there on page 3 at the very bottom, and the council directs staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for development variance permit DVP 202 at 5477 Lost Lake Road. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Development variance permit DVP 203 at 461 Albert Street. Staff recommendation that council direct that council direct staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for developments variance permit DVP 203 at 461 Albert Street. Move. Second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Property maintenance bylaw 1990 number 3704, and it's requested rather the council herein wishing to speak with respect to the property maintenance for the properties listed below. If you are in attendance, you could please identify yourself. And the staff recommendation of the council pursuant to property maintenance bylaw 1990 number 3704 direct the owners of the following properties to remove the materials as listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at the owner's cost. Item 1 has been pulled. Item 2 is 251 Mount Benson Street. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 251 Mount Benson Street? That particular property shows discarded clothing, toys, household goods, furniture, garbage, tools, and miscellaneous debris. The next item is 644 and 646 Nova Street. Anyone in attendance would like to speak to matters related to 644 and 646 Nova Street? Those properties have been identified because of discarded household garbage, discarded wood and tires, and miscellaneous debris. Thank you. Is there a second? Moved and second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Illegal grow operation at 464 Bruce Avenue. It's requested the council herein wishing to speak with respect to illegal grow operation at 464 Bruce Avenue. Staff recommendation of council pursuant to section 72 and 73 of the Community Charter order the owners of 464 Bruce Avenue to remove the structure or bring it up to standard within 30 days. Is there anyone in attendance that wishes to speak to matters related to 464 Bruce Avenue? Seeing none, thank you. Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Unresolved building deficiencies, bylaw contravention notice at 719 Halliburton Street. It's requested the council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies at 719 Halliburton Street. Is there anyone in attendance that has any issues or wishes to speak to matters related to 719 Halliburton Street? Seeing none, the staff recommendation of the council by resolution instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting 719 Halliburton Street, illegal construction, alter single residential dwelling to include 2 secondary suites and alter garage to include a secondary suite at the Land, Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter.
Move staff's recommendation.
Move. Second. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Unresolved building deficiencies, marijuana grow operations, bylaw contravention notice. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies or grow operations for the properties listed below, and the staff recommendation and council by resolution instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 5.7 of the Community Charter. Those two properties are 464 Bruce Avenue and 255 Westwood Road. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to speak to matters related to either 464 Bruce Avenue or 255 Westwood Road? Seeing none, if we'd like to make the motion.
Move staff's recommendation.
Move. Seconder. Move and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into corporate services, the Vancouver Island Military Museum Society and the Nanaimo District Museum Society lease agreements by alternative approval process. Staff recommendation that Council 1 receive the report pertaining to Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Vancouver Island Military Museum Society lease agreement bylaw 2012, number 7138, and Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Nanaimo District Museum Society lease agreement, bylaw 2012, number 7158. And I'll actually go through these, and there's bylaws to follow. Item 2, establish a deadline of 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 28, 2012 for receiving elector responses for the alternative approval process in relation to the Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, the Military Museum Society lease agreement bylaw, and the Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Nanaimo District Museum Society lease agreement bylaw, and 3, approve the elector response forms as attached, and 4, determine the total number of electors in the area to which the approval process applies, and the whole of the city of Nanaimo is deemed to be 63,383. Would somebody like to
move staff's
recommendation on 1 through 4? Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The bylaw follows, and the bylaw is that the Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Vancouver Island Military Museum Society lease agreement bylaw 2012, number 7138, pass first reading. Moved. Seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 2, that the Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Vancouver Island Military Museum Society lease agreement 2012, number 7138, pass second reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, that Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Vancouver Island Military Museum Society lease agreement bylaw 2012, number 7138, pass third reading.
For Ted Brothers.
Good for you. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The bylaw now, and that the Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Nanaimo, and the District Museum Society lease agreement bylaw 2012, number 7158, passed first reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Second, of the Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Nanaimo, and District Museum Society lease agreement number bylaw 2012, number 7158, passed second reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, that the Centennial Museum Building, Piper Park, Nanaimo, and District Museum Society lease agreement bylaw 2012, number 7158, passed third reading. And second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Ted Brothers, yeah. A very hard-working... Yeah, a good point. Thank you very much. Yeah, Ted Brothers was a very, very hard-working community member that was very heavily involved with the military museum, and his dream was to have it reestablished in the downtown. It has now been, and thank you, Councillor Kipp, for reminding us. Item B, quarterly direct award purchases. Staff recommendation that Council receive the report regarding the quarterly direct award purchase.
So
moved. Seconder. And just one second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The Nanaimo Squash Club property tax exemption, rather.
Mr. Chair, I move the Nanaimo Squash Club be placed on the property tax exemption bylaw except for the portion of the property occupied by the lounge. Question?
Okay.
No.
Sorry, that Councillor Patchy is on there. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Patchy.
I unfortunately shall not be supporting this. When I recollect what the delegation was all about, one of the strongest arguments I think they made was that this should be done because this particular sport was not supplied by the Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission. There are many other sorts of sports that are also not offered by the Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission, and to me that is simply not a good enough reason. Even though they qualify and have all the qualifications, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Okay. Councillor Johnston.
Just thank you, colleague Padgett. But I just want to bring it to the attention that most sports in the community are do not fulfill the criteria, as they're not not-for-profit organizations. So that is the basic difference, and they do fulfill a void that the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee do not.
Do not supply. That's a good point. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I had some hesitation about this, but I think that our request to staff was to recommend a fair way to evaluate their request, and I think probably fair was the wrong word. I think consistent is a better word, even though the staff report indicates that there's not a lot of consistency. I think we need to develop some consistency, and in recognition of that, I am supporting this.
Okay. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be supporting the motion. Question to staff, with the exemption, is it 3 years before it comes back to us?
Who's?
How do you turn it on?
It's on. Just go.
Sorry. Thank you. I think our next review is going to be in 2015. 3 years. Yeah.
3 years for an award or for an exemption in 2012. So 2015 is the next time. So an exemption in 2013 would be 2016, or?
I believe everyone on the permissive tax exemption list is coming back for full review at 2015.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Yes, Your Worship. And as with all of the PTEs that are going to be approved this evening, within the body of the letter that goes out to the properties, it will be specified that this is not a given forever, that people do have to reapply and show financial need. So, and we're encouraging the non-for-profits in the community to try and become financially viable, that they can maintain their operations without the assistance from the city.
Okay. For my part, I'll also support the Nanaimo Squash Club. It's a well-utilized facility, and I think it meets the criteria that's been set out. And that said, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Patchy opposed. Balance of Councillor in favor. The motion passes. The moving into a property tax exemption bylaw, that staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to property tax exemption bylaw 2012 number 7152, and note the property tax exemption bylaw 2012 number 7152 includes a permissive tax exemption for the Nanaimo Squash Club based on recommendation 2 of the preceding report. Moved and seconded.
We're just now moving the report, and then we'll move the bylaw.
Then we go into the bylaw. Okay, so the report starts out.
I had a question on that report.
Okay, before we vote, go ahead.
I don't know what page it is on the hard copy of the agenda, but under background,
129 or 130.
it says these exemptions are grouped into the following categories, and I noticed senior citizens housing facilities are different from nonprofit organizations. So do we exempt for-profit senior citizens housing facilities?
Who's going to do that?
Your Worship, I don't believe so. There is a statutory exemption, I believe, for seniors housing, nonprofit senior housing in the legislation, so I believe that's why it's separate.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll have to confirm that, but I'm 99% certain that the majority of market seniors housing, or all the market seniors housing, does pay.
Okay, thank you.
Were those the George Perks over on Buttertubs, these two, I believe?
Okay. Question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to the bylaw that's applicable. Number 1, that property tax exemption bylaw 2012 number 7152 to exempt certain lands and buildings from taxation passed first reading. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 2, that property tax exemption bylaw 2012 number 7152 passed second reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, that property tax exemption bylaw 2012 number 7152 passed third reading. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Community services, there are none into bylaws with no accompanying report. 11A, that zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.024 to rezone part of 3500 Rock City Road from town site residential R6 to comprehensive development district zone 9 CD9 in order to develop a 15-lot subdivision be adopted. Move. Second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. B, that licensing and control of animals amendment bylaw 2012 number 4923.09 to increase license and impound maintenance fees be adopted. Move. Second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. C, that highway closure and dedication removal portion of Highland Boulevard adjacent to 2180 and 2190 Highland Boulevard bylaw 2012 number 7154 be adopted. Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, that highway closure and dedication removal portion of Bowen and Meredith Road adjacent to 2103 Bowen Road bylaw 2012 number 7155 be adopted.
So moved.
Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Bylaw status sheet. Well, we've moved right along. Any notices of motion? Number 14.
I will be bringing forward a notice of motion regarding documentation flow and timelines of documentations, how we receive them, how long it takes to get to us. So I'll bring forward a motion on our next agenda for that.
Okay. I think staff has a wrinkled brow. Is there something that, were you looking for clarification on that?
I'll write the motion.
Do you have it in writing?
No, I will get the motion to him.
Okay, if you would, that'd be much appreciated.
Just notice of motion.
Okay. And
other business too, Your Worship, if there's no more notice.
Yes, we're on to 15, other business.
Yes, Your Worship. Although I'd like to say the purpose that Councillor Anderson spoke about the pink shirt, I totally relate to. The bullying issue is phenomenal in our world right now, especially with cyberbullying. But the reason I have this shirt on today is to support the firefighters, and the purpose of this is to bring their support and recognition to breast cancer awareness. And they've offered these shirts out to staff and the fire department and people and council right now. And other than just the direct cost of the shirts, the money's going towards breast cancer and awareness for breast cancer, and the fire department in Nanaimo supports that. But I also support, so I'm using double duty on this pink today too. So I just want other business.
Good point. Well, and a big thank you to the Nanaimo firefighters for getting involved in this program, because it's a worthwhile one for sure. Okay, we're moving into question period, agenda items only, item 16.
Gord Fuller, 604 Nicholl Street. At the beginning of tonight's meeting, our Honourable Mayor made a statement to the citizens in the audience about respecting this, that, and the other thing. Is there a code of conduct by which Mayor and Council operate? And where is that accessible?
I think, I don't know whether you're being serious or facetious.
No, I'm being dead serious because...
Well, as you usually are. Anyway, the reason I brought that up is because the room was very full.
No.
And sometimes when we have very full rooms, because you never miss a meeting, you know. And so I just want to make sure that the people respected those people speaking like we're respecting you.
Yeah. And I get that, and I totally agree with you on that. What I'm asking, is there a code of conduct for mayor and council to adhere to?
Your Worship, there are a couple things. One is the council procedure bylaw. The other is Robert's Rules of Order. But no, there's no specific code of conduct for councillors other than laid out in those documents.
So whereas we can ask the citizens to respect council, on occasion members of council or the mayor have in the past disrespected citizens. So I would like to
have you got an example of that statement you're saying we have?
Yeah.
Okay, give us an example.
I could give you a number
Just
of
give
examples.
us an example.
There was an example of, let's see, I'll give you an example from a few years ago.
Well, no, we're not interested in a few years ago. We're talking about the current council here.
Yeah. I'll pull some up off the video and send them to you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has questions for the council? Someone like to make... Oh.
Robert Fuller, 3350 Hammond Bay Road. I noticed under the quarterly direct award purchases, there was a direct award, and this is listed on pages 125 and 126 of the agenda, to Windley Construction in the amount of $53,379.21 for off-site work at the Wesley Street Supportive Housing Project. I was just wondering if someone could tell me what exactly this off-site work was pertaining to.
Okay, that's a fair question.
Your Worship, it's civil work, paving and the like, related to the supportive housing building being built on Wesley Street, and it was work done by Windley at the pricing they provided for the building they're building adjacent on Wallace Street, backing on Wesley Street. So they were doing work on their site, and they extended their pricing onto the city property, and staff considered it very favorable pricing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Hi.
Kathy Davis, 306 Pine Street. My question concerns the partnering agreement between the City of Nanaimo and the Nanaimo Port Authority.
I think you mean between the Nanaimo Port Authority and Northwest Marine?
No, Mayor Rattan, I'm actually speaking about a partnering agreement between the City of Nanaimo and the Nanaimo Port Authority. And from my perspective, because you have supposedly a good faith partnering agreement with the Nanaimo Port Authority, then certainly we would expect that that council would speak on behalf of all of the citizens of Nanaimo regarding what is now a public walkway. As Gino Sadola said many years ago, the walkway must be preserved, and
we're
the
talking
harbor
about
must be
agenda items
preserved.
only now, though. It has to be an agenda item. This was not covered on the agenda tonight?
I'm speaking about a partnering agreement between City Council and the Nanaimo Port Authority. And sir,
agreement? We're just going to get a ruling on what you've asked here.
Okay, thank you.
Your Worship, I presume Mrs. Davis is speaking about the arrangement between the Port Authority and the city for enforcement of bylaw enforcement or buskers on the walkway?
I'm not actually, sir. I'm speaking about a former partnering agreement between the City of Nanaimo, a formal partnering agreement.
I'm not aware of.
Nor am I.
All right, I can send you an email of it tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
No adjournment? What's that? Is that the Port Authority Working Group? Is there a document related to that?
No, she's done with some kind of a, she's going to send it to us. I don't know what the question is either.
No? Okay, thanks.
Motion to reserve. Okay, move and second. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.